I am optimistic that the post-2015 Millennium Development Goals will have as a theme peace and security. I think that that's something that we need to insist on as these are passed and implemented. And also, in terms of the indicators, both Doris and Kathleen have pointed out the inseparable link between peace and development. 1.5 billion of us today are living in countries of persistent conflict. Building human security and a culture of peace and nonviolence. And by human security, as Kathleen referred to, that means being able to take one's children to the doctor, to send one's children to school, to go to the water point, to go to the market, to be free from fear. Secondly, one of the indicators that's being put forth is to prevent and reduce violent death and injury. Thirdly, to ensure that at least 50% of the participation in peace and security is carried out by women. Now this to me is an artificial quota. I think it's more than 50% if we just look and embrace what's already happening on the ground. And then another indicator that's being put forth as an implementation for this particular peace and security goal is the reduction of the world's militaries by 10% each year. Now, we increase human security, we prevent and reduce violent death and injury, and reduce the militaries. We do that by increasing nonviolent, unarmed ways for civil society to build safety and security. Of about 100 people who are actively working in 10 locations in 6 states throughout South Sudan today. We've been there for almost 4 years. Among the things we do, and this reflects what Doris was talking about, is the direct protection of civilians who are under threat of violent conflict, the support of civil society to protect themselves and to prevent further outbreaks, and the support and building of capacity for existing protection mechanisms. So our work is both reactive, in terms of reacting to the flashpoints of violence, but also proactive. We also have been accompanying people on the ground. The displacement now in South Sudan, since Doris was there in mid-December, is approaching 1 million people, including close to 800,000 who are internally displaced. And so as people are fleeing through the bush, we will provide protective accompaniment to them, as you see in this photo, as people migrate to safer locations. And this is all done, initiated by the local communities. They're the ones that are deciding where they need to go. Our job is to provide them with protection after they make those decisions. Doris has mentioned our women's peacekeeping teams. There are 11 of those teams that are active right now in South Sudan and are working in various locations to provide stability and security for not only women and children, but also for men. And so often when gender is talked about in terms of peace and security, it's talked about with women as victims. And often women and children are almost the same term, when in fact these women and many more are leading efforts at direct physical protection and the development of violence deterrent activities on the ground. An example of that took place in Jonglei State, in the community of Kondako. When our team first arrived there, a security meeting was held, and it was all men who showed up. And so they talked, and we listened, and then afterwards some questions were asked, well, who are the women leaders? And they identified one woman, a woman by the name of Mary, and in talking with her, she said, let's have a women's security meeting. You name the time and place, I'll bring the women. And she came walking up the road with 80 women. This is in a very remote place. One of the things that they identified as a problem was that within this relatively small community, there were 17 reported rapes per month. Now, many more than that, of course, went on. That's the number that were reported. And that this was often being done by stray soldiers, because there was a camp north of the community. The soldiers would come through, find women usually at the water point or at the community garden. And so these women set up two strategies. One was, there's a cell phone tower near. And so every woman was within a quick walk of someone with a cell phone. And so they developed early warning indicators of what were indicators of possible problems. And then they would walk to a person with a cell phone who would activate a network, or what's sometimes called a phone tree. Basic organizing. And so then when there was a suspicious incident, when indicators were showing that there was a vulnerability, groups would form and would go, accompanied by teams from Nonviolent Peaceforce, to the area of vulnerability. Second, the women set up patrols working. There is a UN Blue Helmet peacekeeping contingent there from India of armed peacekeepers. And there is a small UN police contingent that's there. And so 3 patrols were set up per day. One in the morning by the armed military peacekeepers, one in the afternoon by the UN police, and then one in the late afternoon and evening by Nonviolent Peaceforce, because being unarmed, we were the only ones who can go out after dark in terms of protocols. What happened was, over the space of 2 months, the number of reported rapes dropped to 0. In terms of early warning, early response, this was a situation that actually happened about a little over a year ago in Lake State, where the community had set up early warning indicators. And again, communities know when things are amiss. They maybe not have systematized it. And that's one of the things we can do, is to help to systematize. Well, you know, this is here, this is here, this is here, so that's an early warning of a conflict. That's not enough. You have to have an early response. So in this situation, the early warning system had been implemented, and a fight had broken out between 2 rival groups, and there was actual physical fighting. So our team was summoned along with community people, and we went to the site of the violence. When included in that team is one of our national peacekeepers, Abraham, and one of our internationals, Asha. And as you can see, there's quite a height difference between the 2 of them. Asha is from India and is an international human rights lawyer. So when they got there, and the fighting had already erupted, one of the young fighters turned to Abraham and said, "Who's the small girl?" And Abraham said, "Why, that's Asha Ashokan." "Well, where's she from?" "She's from India." "Well, why is she here?" "She's here to get you to quit fighting." And this young warrior said, if somebody is going to care that much to come that far to get us to quit fighting, we will. And he called his men off. Now that's an incidental moment. But in violent conflict, moments mean everything. So that gave us a chance to convene the chiefs of the two competing tribes to come together to work out a solution over the next day. And these groups did not go back to fight.
This is really, I thank you, because Nonviolent Peaceforce, they are existing in either refugee camp, and they know what to do. So I witness what they are doing on the ground. They're really doing good job on the ground. And I want to say the approach which they took to do the peace work on the ground is really good approach.